You mean to tell me that Dreamworks, after releasing two back-to-back flops in Kung Fu Panda Boar and the abysmal Megamind 2, released a live-action remake of the first How to Train Your Dragon, and it's actually good. Like, it's not a Disney-level piece of crap. That blows my mind, because I was expecting to have to rip this one apart just like I did pretty much every live-action remake I've reviewed in the past 5 years. But no, believe it or not, we actually get to end Dragon-Thon on a way better note than I thought it would end on. Because, as I said when I reviewed the first movie, I was not looking forward to this remake at all. I thought it was going to be just another bland, boring cash grab, and it would be the same thing as the Disney remakes with little to no effort and annoying, egregious modernization up the ass. Well, no, actually. DreamWorks actually did what Disney should be doing, sticking as close to the original movie as possible while making it into its own thing. I don't know how they did it, but they did it. And this is definitely going to be up there with the biggest surprises of the year because, wow, this was actually a lot better than I thought it would be. So, strap yourselves in. This is going to be a very long review, probably one of my longest ever, despite not going into spoilers because I have so much to say on this one. So, let's end Dragon-Thon on an overdue but very, very loud bang. What's up? What's happening? What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Animation Station, which is for anything and everything animation, including A Boy and His Dragon, as well as TV and movies. I'm your host, Jackson Small. Welcome to the finale of Dragon-Thon after, a week or two late. Sorry. Real life, you know how it is. And welcome to my review of the 2025 remake of the first How to Train Your Dragon. I don't know what else to say. I already spoiled that this is going to be a positive review, but I'm just going to say right now, it's a good remake, not a great remake. It falls just short of that. But the fact that it's good at all is a godsend in itself. So, let's not waste any more time and get straight into the review because I have a lot to say. I hope you enjoy. And no spoilers, I promise, no spoilers. But there is still a lot to look over. Here we go. Look, I know I've been really harsh on live-action remakes for the past 5 years since I started reviewing movies professionally, aka when I started Animation Station in the first place. But trust me when I say that I absolutely hate doing that, because I do understand that remakes do have a purpose. It's a purpose that's kind of been overdone and oversaturated at this point, but still a purpose nonetheless. I'm gonna grab this. Sorry, I forgot to grab that before I started recording. Remakes can be a thrilling, nostalgic experience that can offer a different but faithful take on a classic, and while more often than not they can't fully recapture that same lightning-in-a-bottle ingenuity of those original movies, there's still an admirable amount of effort from all involved that's still deserving of appreciation. So, even if a remake is not as good as the original, if it's done well, there is still a lot of effort to appreciate. But when done wrong, like it has been for the past 5-6 years, they can come off as a cynical, hollow, soulless cash grab by corporate boneheads to exploit a fan base by dragging that classic original through the mud and putting in as minimal work as possible as they're allowed to get away with from the greedy executives of the distributors. So basically, it sums up like this. You can have great remakes like Christopher Robin and Nosferatu 2024 that give a fresh, different take but keep the core strengths intact. You can have good remakes like Scooby-Doo 2002 and Friday the 13th 2009. Yes, I Will Die on This Hill, this is a good movie. That have their issues, but are still entertaining for fans of the IP. Then you have okay remakes like Karate Kid 2010 and Little Mermaid 2023. Yeah, that one's kind of shrunk on me a little, but I still think it's a decent remake that try to do things differently to varying degrees of success. And then there's the trash. Like Dragon Ball Evolution, the worst movie ever made by humanity, and I will die on that hill. Pretty much every video game movie in existence, with very few exceptions. Illumination Mario, most of the Mortal Kombat Legends series, the Sonic movie trilogy, they're canon. Those are the very few exceptions to that rule. Nightmare on Elm Street 2010, Smurfs, Cat in the Hat, and almost every single recent Disney remake that are made for nothing more than money and treat the fans like they're brain-dead morons who will buy anything with a name attached to it. Like, that's just the way I see it. If you see it differently, more power to you. That's just how I see it. And like I said, when I reviewed the original How to Train Your Dragon not too long ago, I was not excited for this remake at all. Sure, I can't cut Dreamworks a little bit of slack, because this is their first ever attempt at it. Like, they've never done a live-action remake before in their entire history. So, unlike Disney, who do it so much it's become a joke at this point, Dreamworks is trying this for their first ever time in their history. So, I can cut them a little bit of slack, because you don't expect the first attempts of anything to be, like, the most amazing thing ever. Unless it's, like, a classic original movie. You know what I mean. But, yeah, I can cut Dreamworks a little bit of slack. Not a lot, but a little. But, after suffering through the likes of Kung Fu Panda 4 and the unwatchable Megamind 2 versus the Doom Syndicate, as well as Disney's continuous waste of time like Borfasa, Lord Farquaad and the Seven Controversies, and Lalo and Shite, just to name a few, I've just been too tired and constantly burned by both sides to work up anything for this one. So naturally, I expected it to be a colossal shipwreck that I'd have to suffer through and tear apart miserably once again. However, to my surprise, most of the responses, especially from some of my fellow critics and friends on Facebook, have been really positive in saying that it was actually a lot better than they could have ever expected it to be. So, I started feeling a little better about it as a result, and now, what was this, 2 days ago I made this? 1 day ago, okay. And now, yesterday, I have finally seen it for myself. And I gotta say that despite having no reason to exist, outside of Dreamworks obviously hopping on the live-action remake trend that Disney keeps making money off of because people are blinded by nostalgia, this is pretty damn good. And a textbook example of how to do a remake correctly. Acting is mostly solid, especially Mason Thames, apology if I mispronounce your name, who's actually really good as the new Hiccup. Like, he's no Jay Baruchel, absolutely not, but he does a really good job and is actually a good casting for this character. Sure, he doesn't have Jay's charisma or, goofy voice tone, but he's still really good, and all throughout the movie, I was constantly surprised at how good he actually is. And Gerard Butler, of course, being as fantastic as ever as Stoic for the third time. Like, I had no hope for this remake, but I knew that Gerard Butler getting to reprise his role as Stoic was one of the best decisions that they made with this movie, because it's one of those roles where you just can't see anyone else in that role. And not to mention Gerard Butler, he does actual voice acting. So, it doesn't sound like his normal voice, and he did an amazing job in that original movie. And I'm happy to say that he's still fantastic here too. With one little caveat, we'll get to it later when we get to the cons, but for the most part, he does a fantastic job once again as Stoic, and I was glued to the screen every second he was on screen. The effects are much better than most recent remakes, and especially the dragons sometimes look downright excellent. And this is mainly because that they did the smart thing and kept the dragon designs the same. Not to mention, since the dragons are supposed to look mostly uncanny anyway, aside from Toothless, the uncanny, realistic CGI actually works a lot better here than it does in any of the live-action Disney crap. Like, I can buy these CGI models as these dragons from the movie. That's pretty much the highest praise I can give it. The characters are still pretty much themselves, except for Snoutlout, who's actually better than his original counterpart. That may or may not get me some heat in the comments, but trust me, he is actually better in this version than he is in the original version. And maybe it's a little biased because I find MCU Flash a lot funnier than Jonah Hill, but I don't know. Not to mention they also gave him like a really subtle story in the background that forwards his character. So yeah, Snoutlout is actually better in the remake than he is in the original animated movie. I don't care if that's something that's going to get me speared in the comments section. That's the honest truth. And yes, Snoutlout in this live-action remake is played by the guy that plays Flash Thompson in the MCU. And just like there, he is funny as hell. The flying scenes are still amazing and do a great job of recapturing that thrill of darting through the air. Like, despite this being a live-action remake, they actually did a great job conveying the thrill of darting through the air on the back of a dragon, just like the original did. Heck, in some respects, it actually looks a little better, because if you remember in my original Dragons review, I did say that the animation has kind of aged like milk. Well, here, since it's more modern technology, it looks a little better, a little cleaner, and especially with some of the new cinematography they have with the giant, expansive landscape shots, it is beautiful, a grand majority of the time. So, yeah, flying scenes, still amazing. The writing and script are the same as the original, with zero modernism whatsoever. I kid you not, that is like, one of the biggest pros that I can give this movie. That they kept the writing and script the exact same as the original, with little to no differentiation. Maybe every now and then there's like an added line or two, but aside from that, it's the exact same script and the exact same lines. And there is zero forced modernism anywhere in this movie. That is a godsend. Again, another thing that Disney keeps screwing up that Dreamworks is actually showing them how to do correctly. Again, I can't believe the words that are coming out of my mouth, but yeah. Dreamworks actually did something better than Disney. The costumes and recreation of Burke are impressive in their accuracy. Like, I legit love the costumes in this movie. They are so well designed, they are extremely accurate to the source material, but they still have that slight realistic edge. And with Burke itself, even though there is some of it that is obviously CGI, it does look really good and as faithful to a recreation of that location as you can get with the technology that's in front of you. Cinematography is outstanding and can sometimes look just as, if not even more gorgeous than the original, specifically in the sweeping landscape shots. I can't even try to hide that. When they do like those big sweeping landscape shots over these mountains and oceans and all this other stuff, it is downright breathtaking. Especially if you're watching it in IMAX. The humor is still pretty funny, the pacing is good, the runtime, despite being longer than the original, doesn't feel dragged out. That's another weird thing with this one. Like, it's longer than its animated counterpart, but it doesn't feel longer. Like, it feels like it's running at the exact same pace as the original, but apparently some scenes are just slower than others, apparently. I don't really know. All I know is that it's still paced really well, and despite having a longer runtime, it's not dragged out and it doesn't add any stupid unnecessary crap. So, yeah. Again, another thing that Dreamworks got right that Disney keeps screwing up. The music is still phenomenal, sounding better than ever, with the slightly new orchestration that's given to make it feel more cinematic. The music in this movie is still great, It was great in the original, and it's even greater here because they give it an extra, slightly different new composition and orchestration to make it sound a lot more sweeping and cinematic and bombastic. And it sounds amazing. Seriously, go on YouTube and listen to it. It is fantastic. The music is still phenomenal. The action is really cool, especially with the slightly new spin they added to it since it's live action. Like, they get a little bit more creative with some of the choreography and some of the cinematography and the camera shots. Like, they do some interesting stuff that the original didn't. The emotional connection between Hiccup and Toothless is still wonderful, and it's mainly because, again, Mason Thames is a great Hiccup, and Toothless is still adorable. He's still himself, and even in this newer CGI, he's pretty much exactly like he looks in the animation. It's impressive. And rewatchability is on the higher end. I can see myself rewatching this sometimes. Like, no, it's not going to be as rewatchable as the original. Obviously not. But it is still pretty rewatchable, and I feel like once this is out on physical media and I watch it again, I'm going to notice a lot more hidden details than I missed the first time around. In other words, it's got good rewatchability, and it probably has a lot more hidden throughout its background details that I just didn't really have time to fully examine because, it's a theater. You can't play, pause, fast forward, or rewind. Okay, that's not to say it's perfect though, because the biggest and absolute worst part of this remake is Astrid. And I put it in quotations because I refuse to call this thing Astrid. The look, I can live with. The look, I can get past it. Like, it's a remake, it had to do something different. That's fine. The look is not the problem. I can get over that. But her acting is atrocious. She has zero the charisma of her animated counterpart, has no chemistry with the new Hiccup at all, and every single line that comes out of her mouth, despite being the exact same lines from the original, word for word, sounds beyond forced and flat. Like she's only here for the paycheck. I'm sorry, but I did not buy her for a second. Like I said, the look, I can get over. It's different. It's a remake and wants to do things differently, fine. I can get over the look. The look's fine. It's the acting. The acting in her acting in this movie as this character is atrocious and an outright insult to the character itself. Seriously, just really bad. Like, I get that she wanted to make her version different. A lot like how Halle Bailey made her version of Ariel different from Jodie Benson's. But, my goodness, this was such a bad miscasting that constantly took me out of the experience and caused almost non-stop eye-rolling. I hate this sorry excuse of Astrid that we get in this movie. And no, that doesn't mean like she's a terrible person or anything like that, or deserves half the hate she's getting online, but this was just not the role for her, and it's very clear that it wasn't. Seriously, lady, fire your agent. This was a bad choice. Then there's the rest of the flaws, which are mostly small, but there's still stuff worth mentioning, like the human interactions lacking in emotional resonance, specifically Stoic's tiny but meaningful facial expressions from the original being absent here. This is the one problem that I have with Gerard Butler returning as Stoic in this live-action remake, and it's that he can't be as expressive as he is in animation. Because with animation, you can play around more with like the facial features and the body language and stuff like that. Because since it's animation, you're not bound to the rules of logic and reality. But the problem here is that since this is a live-action remake, you don't really get that. Like, you don't get those subtle little looks of Stoic in between conversations with like Hiccup and Gobber that made him seem a lot more three-dimensional than he looked like initially. And it doesn't help that it's kind of overcompensated by Butler, likely being aware of that, and he went a little too over the top. Don't get me wrong, his performance is fantastic, and I'm glad that he gets to continue doing one of the best roles in his career. But just something about it just did not feel right. And sometimes, specifically when he was like angry, he felt like he was going a little too much into it. Just saying. Maybe it's just a me thing, but I couldn't help but notice that as I was watching the movie. The ultimate villain dragon still being as egregious as it was in the original, I still don't like this villain dragon at all. It's forced, it has no reason being there, and it just turns the whole movie around for no reason. A scene with the baby dragons from the original being removed from this new version for pretty much no reason. You remember that scene in the original where where Toothless and Hiccup are up on the cliff after they had their first big flight together, and they're being surrounded by these little green baby dragons? That's not in this version. And I don't really get why, especially considering the fact that it is longer than the original, so it's not like it didn't have the time to put that scene in there. I don't know. It's just a weird thing, and I wish there was some kind of explanation. The acting, as solid as it was, is nowhere close to the performances of the original. Like, Jay Baruchel is still Hiccup. That is never going to change. As great as Mason Thames did, Jay just brought something so unique to that character and to that performance throughout all three of those original movies. Maybe Mason will be able to rise up there with remakes of 2 and 3, but for now, he's just not there yet. He's close. He is off to a very good start, but just not quite there yet. And like I said, Asher in the original is leagues better than this sorry excuse for one. And the third act is still a mess. It was a mess in the original movie, and it's still a mess here. But again, I kind of get it, because you are sticking as close to the original as possible and not modernizing anything, so yeah, you don't really feel obligated to fix the problems of the original by doing a remake. I don't know. Regardless, though, for something that I had absolutely no faith in and rooted actively to crash and burn, it managed to soar far higher than I could have ever predicted. Sure, it's not better than the original movie, but Dreamworks, surprisingly enough, got really close and did a good job of trying to recapture that same magic by putting in a lot more effort into this remake than expected. Especially, again, because we're conditioned by the crap that Disney keeps shoveling out their buttholes, that we expect this to be that same bottom barrel quality. So when it's above that, it's genuinely surprising. I can't believe I'm saying it, but I actually do recommend you go out to the theaters and see this one. And I'm so happy that it's doing so well right now. This movie's making huge bank, and for once, I'm glad that it is. Like, for once, I am actually telling you to go out and support a live-action remake. I know, I still cannot believe the words that are coming out of my mouth, but this is one that is definitely worth your time, that is worth your money, and that will more than please you if you are a fan of this franchise. Dreamworks actually understood what Disney kept screwing up. Instead of, doing what they did, they instead stuck as close to the original as they possibly could. And as a result, they've turned in one of the best remakes of an animated classic in years. If you love the Dragons franchise and you want to see how a remake is done correctly, absolutely check this one out. Like, throw Lalo and shite into the toilet and go watch this instead. It is a far better remake, it has much more effort put into it, it's far more faithful to its source material, and it's a genuinely, really fun experience. And with that, my final verdict for the How to Train Your Dragon remake is a unexpected but very well deserved 7.5 out of 10. That puts it a half point under the original. Good job, Dreamworks. You made me like and want to actively support a live-action remake for once, instead of ripping it to shreds. You did good, Dreamworks. You done did good. I cannot wait for the Dragons 2 remake, especially if they keep Cate Blanchett as Hiccup's mom. Because a lot like Stoic, it's one of those roles that you just cannot see anyone else as. So, yep, I can't wait for the Dragons 2 remake, and I can't wait for Bad Guys 2 later this year. So, good job, Dreamworks. You actually did something correctly for once, and absolutely humiliated Disney. You get extra brownie points for that. Because it's about time someone knocked them down a peg. But that's it. That is all I've got, and that is literally everything that I have to say of this Dragon-Thon marathon thing. Thank you so much for watching. I'm losing my voice because I've been talking for almost a half hour. But, yeah, definitely check this one out, guys. It's actually worth your time. Again, I can't believe I'm saying it, but Dreamworks did a good job. Go see it. It is worth seeing in IMAX. Kids will have fun. Fans will have fun. I'm pretty sure anyone will have fun with this movie. You know, unless you're a nostalgia critic, then you just hate fun. But anyway, thank you guys so much for watching, and as for our final ranking of all these movies together, it goes like this. Yes, the remake is on the bottom, but trust me when I say it's just barely, and it's only by means of elimination. Like, this is still a really good remake, but that trilogy was just so great and so high quality that it's going to be hard to match that. And DreamWorks, they got close, but just not quite there yet. You're on the right track, though, DreamWorks, so good job. Now you have me excited and actively anticipating the second remake whenever it comes out. But please, for the love of Gunther, get rid of this Astrid. Like, please recast her with someone a little more talented. Seriously, if you can do that, you pretty much knock out the biggest negative of this movie in your sequel. Okay, I'm done talking now. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next review.